Hi friends, and welcome back to Venus Mastermind, a space where feminine healing, nervous system truth, and karmic astrology come together to reveal the soul beneath the story. I'm so excited about going into week 3 of my From Wound to Wisdom video series. And we have one other week after this, which is week 4. There's a total of 4 weeks in this series. And this was kicked off by the transits that happened in July and the latter part of June. So thank you for sharing this moment with me as we are diving forward in why this transit was not only important to the collective, but why was it important for me to start sharing my story with you. So in week 1, we opened with Mercury retrograde in Astrologically conjuncting my natal K2. This was a really potent activation of the karmic wound of the silenced child that I shared. The scapegoat, the one who learned to internalize other people's poison just to survive. We explored how this wound distorts self-perception, how it turns wisdom into shame and truth into danger, and that was what I experienced with K2 in Astrologically. And how true healing, though, begins the moment that we say, this wasn't mine, and I release it now. And there's obviously steps to that. It wasn't as easy as just 1, 2, 3, I'm releasing it. It was done through therapy, which I will share a little bit more in the latter part of this video in week 3. Then in week 2, we met the beautiful prisoner, and this really was Saturn and Rohini. That's the archetype of that, and that's in my natal chart. And Venus transiting Rohini and Uranus transiting through Kritika in the sign of Taurus activated my Saturn in Rohini, alongside the collective ache of women raised to perform perfection while starving for authenticity. And you've seen this all in the headlines. And again, I shared that in those week 2 videos. We explored how control and appearance became safety strategies. The inner child learned to sparkle on the outside while disassociating on the inside. This is really what I experienced, like so many other children and women in our societies, and how sacred structure, true Saturnian devotion, can rebuild the self from within. I understood what Saturn was doing in my chart 10 years ago in Rohini and what it was reflecting and the experience I got from it, but I didn't understand, which is what I bring into my practice today, is those very disempowering, hurtful transits and or natal placements our chart can actually become very powerful. In fact, it could become our superpower, and there's actually healing to be done there, and we can fully heal from it and live an absolute wonderful life. These are not just natal placements to harm us. These are natal placements that we indeed can heal from no matter what it is, and become self-empowered and really use that in our life to launch our life in whatever way that we see fit. So I just wanted to share a little bit of that. So now in week 3, we go deeper because the boys that formed in those environments, the ones shaped by manipulation, gaslighting, and the pressure to keep peace, that voice was never truly safe. And now through the current transits, we're all being asked to confront that. And when I'm talking about the current transits, I'm only talking about bits and pieces in each week, but it is the holistic picture of Uranus, Saturn, Neptune, Pluto, Mars, K2, Rahu. It's all of them combined. Jupiter and Ardra is extremely important also in the storytelling. So right now, K2 is transiting in Purva Falguni. This nakshatra sits in the sign of Leo. It's activating the places in our charts where we learn to speak what was allowed, not what was true. Purva Falguni is a nakshatra of art, expression, beauty, and connection, but also performance, approval, and seduction. It's where we first learn how to be seen. and often have to edit ourselves to be loved. When Ketu transits Purva Falguni, it dissolves the illusion around performative expression. It activates the parts of us that learn to speak what was allowed, not what was true. Boy, did I experience that in my lifetime. To charm instead of confront, to keep the peace instead of our power. And in July, as Ketu transited Purva Falguni, dissolving old performance-based identities and truth distortions, Mars entered Uttara Falguni, bringing fire, force, and sacred severance to the healing. And Mars was transiting the portion of this that sits in the sign again of Leo. So while Purva Falguni is asking, what must I let go of in order to stop performing? Uttara Falguni was asking us, what truth am I now willing to stand in, even if it costs me belonging? Mars in this domain ignites courage. It burns through compliance, calls out performative peacekeeping, and defends the voice that was once silenced. So together, Ketu and Mars created a portal for cutting the karmic cords that kept us quiet. That was a time when old survival speech, the kind shaped by manipulation, family dynamics, or public image, could no longer hold. The soul's voice surged forward. And with Venus recently joining Uranus in Taurus in July, it shook the ground beneath all the old safety strategies stored in our bodies. This is more than just a moment. This is a collective nervous system awakening, the kind where suppressed truth doesn't just rise emotionally. It pulses through the soma. It disrupts the mask. It refuses to stay silent. These aren't just personal memories surfacing. They're karmic imprints unraveling on both an individual and generational level. So if you've been feeling deep grief without a clear source, a sudden intolerance for spiritual bypassing, or a voice inside you that must be heard, no matter the risk, please know you're not alone. You're not unstable. You're not too much. You are awakening at the exact time your soul agreed to. And the sky is backing you. The sky is backing me. And we're in this together. These transits are especially personal. I feel it in my body just because they're activating key points in my personal natal chart. Right now in my Saturn Ketu Dasha, a karmic chapter that doesn't just teach, it unearths. And as I record this, Ketu is transiting directly over my natal Mercury in the Purva Falguni with Mars right beside it. If those words are new to you, here's what it means. The karma around my voice, my truth, and how I survived is rising, not to be performed, but to finally be spoken. And I'm not the only one feeling it. Because when Venus and Uranus aligned in Taurus in July, they activated the parts of the sky that govern the body, the voice, my nervous system, your nervous system, and deep intuition. This is a moment when the collective feminine nervous system is waking up. And when I'm speaking of the collective feminine nervous system, I'm also speaking up for the men's feminine nervous system. This is not just about women. This is collectively our feminine nervous system for men and for women. The truth we've held in our tissues, in our silence, in our dreams is demanding to be named. So if you've been feeling a bit shaky, maybe louder inside than usual, or perhaps like you're finally seeing something you've suppressed for years, please hear this. You're not breaking down. You're breaking open. And this episode is for you. Now, astrologically speaking, There's no major planet currently transiting Hasta in the sky. But that doesn't mean that Hasta themes in my life aren't being activated, because this is where my moon lives. And right now, while I'm in my Saturn K2 Dasha, and K2 is the karmic unraveling force, it doesn't just trigger what's happening now. It dissolves what's been buried deep, often without a single planet touching this nakshatra. And as K2 transits over my natal Mercury in Purva Falguni, it's not just my voice being stirred. The entire pattern of how my nervous system formed around speech, silence, and survival. And in my chart, that story lives in this Hasta nakshatra. My moon, my natal Uranus, and Lilith are all placed right here. So even without a transit, the dasha itself is awakening Hasta's imprint. The karmic memory stored in the soma. This isn't the kind of activation that comes from the sky. It comes from the subconscious timing of the soul. Because when K2 dissolves Mercury, what's left is the body's memory. What's left is the hostile wound I experienced. That is what's surfacing in my chart. And that's why I'm speaking right now. I lived most of my life in a body that didn't feel safe, where emotional sensitivity was punished, not protected, where I had to scan the room for danger before I could speak. With the moon, Uranus, and Lilith all in this Hasta nakshatra, I learned to read energy early, to regulate others' emotions, to abandon my own needs just to stay safe. I became hyper-aware and hyper-intuitive, but no one ever validated what I knew. No one confirmed that what I was sensing was real. So my truth, it got trapped in my body, in my nervous system, under the mask of being a good girl. Everything I just shared, the hyper-awareness, the emotional exile, the dissociation, it's not random. It's the deeper signature of Hasta itself. You see, Hasta is ruled by Saboteur, the god of awakening, illumination, and inner light. It governs the hands, the nervous system, and the craft of consciousness. But when the moon lives here, especially with Uranus and Lilith, the light becomes fractured. You see, I've seen too much. I felt too much. And there was nowhere safe to put it. Uranus brings disruption. Lilith brings exile and rage. And the moon here just wants to be held. But instead, she disassociates to survive. She watches life from outside her body. She survives by fragmenting. As I record this, K2 is transiting my natal Mercury in Purva Falguni, and Mars is right there with it, amplifying the fire. That alone is a karmic invitation to speak what's been silenced. But this moment isn't just personal, it's collective. We are all living through a season of nervous system truth-telling, and it's being mirrored in the sky. Recently, Venus through Rohini and Taurus just passing Uranus and Kritika, all within the sign that rules the body, value, nervous system, and sensory memory. At Taurus, that's where the moon is exalted. So any activation here stirs deep emotional material tied to that beautiful nakshatra of Rohini and those Hasta themes. Both of these nakshatras are ruled by the moon, which means they don't just govern emotion. They govern embodied feeling, stored trauma, and the core human need to feel safe inside the body. So when Uranus touches Venus in Taurus, the body wakes. What used to be coping mechanisms like perfectionism, people-pleasing, emotional numbing, or spiritual bypassing begins to crack under the weight of the truth. And this is what so many of us are feeling right now. Why am I so sensitive all of a sudden? Why am I reacting so strongly to things I used to suppress? Why do I feel I'm unraveling emotionally, even when nothing is wrong? Because the planets aren't just moving. They're activating emotional memory stored in the soma, not just the mind. The residue we've carried silently through our childhoods, our lineages, and our feminine conditioning is now rising to the surface. And that is exactly what Hasta governs. Hasta lives in the space between intuition and the survival, where the body becomes the storyteller, where the voice was never allowed to speak. So if your nervous system feels louder lately, if your body is speaking truths your mind can't yet explain, you're not falling apart. You're waking up. We all have Hasta in our charts. So wherever this nakshatra lands in your natal chart, you're feeling it. The archetype of a Hasta moon with Uranus and Lilith is what I call the nervous system oracle. She's the empath who fragmented to survive, the child who became a mirror for everyone's pain but had no one to hold hers. She read energy to stay safe. She disappeared just enough to remain acceptable. She didn't become intuitive by choice. She became intuitive to survive. And now, that gift, the one born in fear, is your wisdom. It is my wisdom. When reclaimed from trauma, it becomes my power. It becomes your power. But it's more than personal, because the nervous system oracle doesn't just sense her own pain. She senses the collective rupture, the hidden grief, the things that were never said but lived on in the body of humanity. And this is so true. I am feeling the collective pain and suffering, not in a victim way, but in a way where I'm holding space. I'm seeing the reality. I'm hearing the cries that I've already healed from. And I am here to help speak the truth. This archetype that once was fragmented now is becoming the translator between the seen and the unseen, between the emotional chaos and the quiet, sacred truth underneath it all. My healing becomes the healing template for others. She teaches us how to listen beneath the words, because sometimes we don't have the words. We can only feel. Name what's been disowned. Hold space for feelings that were never allowed. Speak truth without severing love. And if you can't speak the truth right now because you're going through the healing, not only that I'm holding space, but I can speak the truth for us as a collective. This is embodied leadership. This is what it looks like. Not through dominance, not through charisma, but simply through presence, through the courage to feel what others won't, and the devotion to speak what others cannot right now. This isn't just something I lived, it's something I'm offering, because now I don't just feel for survival. I feel for the sake of clarity, for truth, and for healing. I use this gift in my work as a coach, a guide, and a space holder. For those whose voices were shaped by fear, whose nervous systems aren't still whispering stories that they were never allowed to speak. In my presence, people remember how to come home to themselves, to feel validated, to be heard, They feel safe enough to feel, maybe for the first time in years. They stop performing and start listening, not to me, but to their own wisdom in their own bodies. I'm not here to be the loudest voice in the room. I am here to be the clearest mirror, to name what's been hidden, to honor what's been dismissed, to restore sovereignty to the sensitive. So if you've ever felt too much, too fragile, too aware for this world, I want you to know that's not a flaw. It's a frequency. And I'm here to help you reclaim it. Because when the fragmented empaths become whole, we don't just heal ourselves. We help the entire nervous system of the collective to begin to regulate again. And that is how we change the world together. The nervous system truth surge is here. We don't have to look far to see this playing out. It's unfolding in real time across every platform, every industry, every layer of the collective psyche. I see it clear as day. We're watching it online in our social media platforms, in headlines, in relationships, and in our own bodies. We're seeing it in the whistleblowers, especially women and survivors, being labeled unstable, hysterical, or too emotional for telling the truth. Trust me, they are trying to make this stop and they cannot. We're too loud. It is the truth. Spiritual communities bypassing abuse, blaming victims, and protecting predators under the guise of unity and forgiveness. No, that's not going to work anymore. Not for you, not for me, and not for the collective. Also, we're seeing women's intuition dismissed as drama while men's hunches are praised as leadership and strategy. That doesn't work anymore. Empathic women burning out from decades of emotional labor, fawning, and managing everyone else's nervous systems just to survive. And we cannot do that no more. I will not do that no more. My body is healing. It's taking time from this exact thing that I just described. I will no longer regulate my system for somebody else's abuse and actions. A new wave is rising on social media now. We're seeing reels and videos go viral, telling the stories history erased, that women were the original inventors of some of these great medicines and spiritual systems and mathematical frameworks and cultural technologies, but they were silenced, erased, written out of the narratives, while their husbands and men that they worked alongside took the credit. And what I also noticed at the same time that these stories are starting to surface is that they are now trying to drown it out by putting in fake narratives so that you don't hear the truth and that you get tired of looking at it and hearing it. And what do I mean by that? Let me see if I can put this into words. When I'm starting to see the reels of actual history that was erased, that women did do. Women were heroes. They were inventors. What's happening is now they're making new reels and they're twisting it with fake narratives, things that could be fake or exaggerated. And so far, by every one realistic real reel that I see, I'm seeing a follow-up of 5 reels that are fake. That's how they twist the narratives. That's how they manipulate and gaslight on social media and drown out the real voices. But this time, I see it, and it's not going to work. So back to the women not getting credit for the inventions that they made and the sacrifices that they made, and the husbands and the men that they worked alongside are the ones who actually accepted the Nobel Prizes, that took all of the credit. These men built their entire careers on the backs of women's brilliances. And now the algorithm can't stop it. The silence is breaking. The truth is being reclaimed. Even if they're trying to drown it out by the fake reels, we're witnessing a radical shift in how women are speaking. Now we're speaking softly but firmly. You will not silence us. I'm choosing myself. I will not have children just to replicate the system. We are not giving our bodies away anymore. We choose who we're going to have children with. They don't get to choose anymore. We are being a voice for those young women being sold off and married to these older men all over these countries. That's got to stop. We cannot allow this as a collective to happen any longer. This is a collective refusal to shrink, to be the good girl, to play the supportive role in someone else's story while ours get erased. And most powerfully, we're shifting the language. We're no longer saying women were raped, but instead, men are raping, men are assaulting. And this isn't about men versus women, because men also rape men. Men also rape boys. They also assault men and boys. We can no longer tolerate this behavior. We need to shift from putting the accountability and the responsibility on women or the victim, the young boys, the young girls, to the men who are doing it. Who are these men? Who are you? We see you now. You're in the spotlight, and they don't like that. We are no longer allowing power to abuse us. So we're stating it a little bit differently. Power is being abused, and we are no longer shouldering the blame for it. And that is speaking directly to the leaderships of the world all over. This is a textbook Hasta and Lilith in my chart theme. The fracture, the exile, the rage that couldn't be voiced, now rising in every medium, every voice, every nervous system that finally had enough. And I know I am on board. I am one of those who've had enough, and I'm ready to speak. Because this isn't just about calling out individuals or institutions or leaderships. It's about dismantling the entire structure that told victims and told women, you're too much. You're imagining it. Be grateful it wasn't worse. And stay sweet. Don't ruin his life. Don't make it about you. But it is about us. It is. But it's also about those abusers. And I think this is perfect timing for us to put the spotlight on the abusers. Here's the truth. Our bodies do remember, despite them trying to silence us. Our dreams do remember. Our lineages do remember. And now we are remembering each other. And this remembering is showing up not only online, but in the courts, in legislation, and policy shifts that finally reflect what survivors have always known. Coercive control is violence. This is a new one. I was shocked when I read these headlines. Several countries are now beginning to codify this truth. England and Wales, Scotland, Ireland, and parts of Australia, including New South Wales and Queensland, have introduced laws that criminalize coercive control within domestic violence legislation, and it's about time. I cannot tell you How many times throughout my life, and my children have also experienced this. In France, course of control is now being recognized in family court rulings with measures to restrict or remove parental rights in cases of conviction. This is the law catching up to the body. The world beginning to name what we've carried in silence. We are no longer invisible. We are no longer to blame for this violence, and we are never going back. I didn't always have the words. For years, I couldn't even locate the fear in my body, let alone express it in words. Nobody heard me, and even if I tried to explain it with words, they didn't understand. They couldn't help me. I couldn't name it without shame. And every time I had to try to express it in words, it only re-traumatized me. And it only brought out shame. But I was lucky. You see, some years ago, I began working with a very special therapist. Someone who held sacred space for me, who didn't just listen to my story, but helped me unravel it from my nervous system. We used tools like hypnotherapy, NLP, and EMDR, not to bypass the pain, but to feel it all the way through and find the part of me that never stopped knowing the truth. That was the beginning of my healing. But this moment, this activation with K2 over my Mercury, with the Mars beside it, with the collective nervous system cracking open, this is the moment I finally knew how to speak about it. Not just process it, not just intellectualize it, but voice it from the body, from my soul. And if you're watching this is your permission too. This isn't just about my healing and my voice, but you get to heal too. You get to speak. You get to stop pretending you're fine just to keep the peace. I had to relearn how to live in my body, to stop over-explaining, to stop apologizing for how I feel, to let my nervous system tell me the truth, even when it made others uncomfortable. And that's what I teach now. Not just mindset or manifestation, and yes, that's a part of it, but to feel and witness your own nervous system truth, your own embodied intuition, and the radical courage to say, I know what I know, and I'm not hiding it anymore. It's your voice. If your voice ever got stuck in your throat, in your truth, if your truth was ever twisted, dismissed, or used to shame you, if your body has been holding what no one else could see, this is your moment, not just to speak, but to reclaim the power beneath your silence, to stop explaining yourself, to stop minimizing your intuition, and to remember that you were never too much. You were too accurate for a world built on denial. But the world is no longer in denial. It is waking up. This isn't just about finding your voice. It's about remembering that your body is a living oracle, that what you feel is real, that what you've always known is sacred, that your nervous system isn't a liability. It's your compass. You were never broken. You were never weak. You were always speaking the truth. The world just wasn't ready to hear it. But now, the world is cracking open. The collective nervous system is waking up. And we need your voice. This is the moment you stop waiting for permission. You are the permission. You are the truth surge. You are the sovereign voice, and you are not alone anymore. Till next time.